Well now, go on and pull up a log, friend. That's it. Sit close to the fire. Feel that warmth on your hands. Night's come down gentle tonight. The sky is clear, the stars are out, and the woods are as calm as an old dog by the porch. You've walked enough for one day. Your mind's carried enough weight. So for tonight, let me do the wandering. I've got a story for you, an old one, older than these trees, some might say. It's about a man who chose to walk and keep walking, planting kindness behind him everywhere he went. Some called him strange. Some called him a saint. But most folks just called him Johnny Appleseed. Now you just rest there, watch the embers drift, and let me tell you how his long, gentle road began. Long, long ago, when most of this land was still wild and wide, there was a man who didn't seem to belong to any one place. He didn't have a grand house, nor a big wagon, nor a tall hat like the city folk. No, Johnny was simple. He wore clothes that had seen many summers and many winters. His feet knew the feel of dirt roads and forest paths. And on his head, if you can believe it, he sometimes wore a cooking pot for a hat. Now some folks laughed at that. Others just shook their heads. But Johnny, he didn't mind. Because Johnny's attention wasn't on how he looked, it was on what he carried. Across his shoulder, slung in a worn-out sack, Johnny carried apple seeds. Hundreds of them. Thousands over the years. Seeds he'd collected from cider mills and orchards, scooped up from the places most people wouldn't bother to look. To them, they were scraps. To Johnny, they were possibilities. Where other folks saw a seed, Johnny saw a tree. And not just a tree, but shade in the summer, shelter for birds, blossoms in the spring, and fruit in the fall. He saw children biting into crisp apples, farmers filling baskets, travelers finding rest under green branches, all from something so small you could lose it in the palm of your hand. So Johnny walked. He walked along rivers and ridges, through little villages just getting started, past lonely cabins and busy farms. And wherever he saw a patch of open ground that looked a little bare, a little empty, he'd stop, kneel down, and tuck a few apple seeds into the waiting earth. Johnny wasn't in a hurry. He never was. While other men chased gold or acres of land or stacks of coins, Johnny chased something quieter. He chased the feeling of leaving a place better than he found it. When he passed a cabin, he would tip his pot hat, give a soft little smile, and offer a story or a song in exchange for a warm meal or a night by the fire. Children liked him right away. They'd peek from behind their mother's skirts or crowd around the doorstep, eyes wide at this skinny man with kind eyes and a sack full of mystery. "Johnny, what's in the bag?" they'd ask. And Johnny would sit on the step, open his hand, and show them the tiny, shiny seeds. "These," he'd say, "well now, these are little bits of tomorrow. You put 'em in the ground today, give 'em some time, a little rain, a little sunshine, and someday when you're taller, you'll be sitting under the shade of the tree that started right here in my hand." The children would lean closer, as if they could already see the branches stretching overhead. Sometimes Johnny would take them out back, near a fence or an empty corner of the field, and together they'd dig a small, neat hole in the earth. One seed, a bit of soil, a gentle pat from small hands and big ones. "There now," Johnny would say, dusting off his knees. "We've planted a promise." Then he'd smile, toss his sack back over his shoulder, and continue on his way, not needing to see the tree to know it would come. Johnny didn't carry much with him. A blanket for cold nights, a tin cup, that funny pot hat, and his endless seeds. But everywhere he went, he carried something else. Gentleness. If a farmer was patching a fence alone, Johnny would wander over, offer a hand and a few quiet words. If a child had scraped a knee, Johnny would sit in the dirt beside them and tell a story so soothing the tears slowed before they'd even realized. Once, when a long winter ran hard and lean, he came to a cabin that had little left. The mother's face was tired. The father's hands were rough and worn. The children were quiet, trying their best not to show how hungry they were. Johnny sat by their fire, what little there was of it, and listened. He didn't rush to speak. He never did. Then he reached into his bag, and this time he didn't pull out seeds. He pulled out a few apples he'd saved, wrinkled from travel but still sweet inside. "Now they ain't much to look at," he said softly, "but they'll fill a belly or two for tonight." The family protested at first, but Johnny only smiled. "Don't you worry about me. I'll find another tree down the road. You just remember, once the snows melt, to save a few seeds from these here. Plant 'em by your fence or by the creek, and next time winter comes calling, you'll have more fruit than you know what to do with." The children never forgot the man who showed up when the wood pile was low and the pantry was thin. Years later, when the little trees out front were strong and bearing fruit, they'd stand under the branches, take a bite of a red apple, and say, "Johnny Appleseed told us this would happen." And somewhere, perhaps on a road not so far away, Johnny would feel a small warmth in his chest, as if an invisible thread tugged gently, connecting him to every tree he'd ever planted. The years rolled by like slow clouds across a summer sky. Winters came and went. Rivers rose and fell. Small settlements grew into towns, and those towns into little cities. But Johnny kept his own pace. Spring would find him walking along muddy roads, picking just the right spots for new seeds to sleep. Summer would find him resting in the shade of trees he'd planted when they were no bigger than his thumb. Children who had once followed him barefoot through the fields were now grown, with families of their own. They would wave to him from their porches, invite him in for supper, tell their children, "That man there? He planted the trees we pick our apples from." Autumn was Johnny's favorite. He'd walk past orchards dripping with apples, branches bending with the weight of the harvest, and his tired old eyes would shine. He'd see baskets filled to the brim, barrels rolling toward storage sheds, hands busy and faces bright. Maybe folks didn't know which tree had sprung from his hand and which from another's, but Johnny knew it didn't much matter. Apples were being eaten. Trees were giving shade. Birds were making nests, and children were laughing under branches. And somewhere in every orchard, in every scattered row of trees along lonely fences and creek bands, a few of those trunks had started as seeds from the sack of a quiet man who just liked to walk and plant and hum little tunes under his breath. In time, people began to tell stories about Johnny even when he wasn't there. Around tables, on porches, and yes, around campfires not so different from this one. They'd say, "I heard Johnny sleeps out under the stars even when the snow falls. I heard he speaks softly to the animals, and none of them ever bother him. I heard he can tell the weather just by the way the wind moves through the branches." Now, maybe some of those stories grew taller than the trees themselves. That's how folk tales work. A little truth, a little mystery, a little stretch for good measure. But underneath all the talk, one thing stayed the same. They remembered his kindness. Not his hat, not his bare feet, not his old patched clothes. What stuck in their minds was how they felt after he left. Maybe a little lighter, a little more hopeful, a little more rooted, like a seed tucked deep into the ground, waiting for its moment to rise. And so, even when Johnny moved on down the road, his stories stayed behind. A child would bite into an apple, wipe the juice from their chin, and ask, "Ma, who planted this tree?" And someone would smile, look up into the branches, and say, "Well now, could be that was Johnny Appleseed who passed through here a long time ago." The wind would move softly through the leaves. The branches would sway, as if nodding in quiet agreement. And here we are, back at our own fire. The stars are still shining. The night is still soft. You can almost imagine, somewhere out there in the dark tree line, a thin, smiling man with a sack over his shoulder and a pot on his head, walking the long road with no hurry in his step, looking for one more place to tuck a seed into the earth. Maybe he passes by a farm, sees a bare hill, and thinks, "One apple tree would look mighty fine right there." Maybe he passes by a lonely cabin and leaves a small handful of seeds on the windowsill, so when the family wakes, they find a quiet gift and a new beginning. Johnny's gone now, of course. All men have their last mile. But the trees remember. They remember the hands that pressed those seeds into the soil, the songs hummed under a wide sky, the footsteps that never asked for anything in return. And every time a new apple tree grows, every time a child climbs its branches, every time someone takes a bite and closes their eyes at the taste, a little piece of Johnny's long, gentle road walks on. So as you lie there now, eyes growing heavy, body warm and still, imagine yourself as one of those seeds, safe in the soft earth, blanketed by the quiet of the night. No need to rush, no need to worry. There is a time for roots to reach down, and a time for branches to reach up. Your only task for this moment is to rest. Let the world be wide and patient around you. Let the crackle of the fire be your lullaby. Let Johnny's long, kind footsteps fade down the road, knowing he's planted something good in the world behind him, just like you've planted good things in yours. Take a slow breath in and let it out. You've done enough for today. You're allowed to be still. You're allowed to sleep. May your dreams be gentle, like a road lined with apple trees, their branches heavy with fruit, their leaves whispering softly in the evening wind. Good night, traveler. Sleep well. I'll keep the fire for you until morning.